The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this week's episode on Thursday, June 15th, 2023. So why are we recording so late this week, folks? I literally just got back from a road trip. In fact, Nancy and I arrived home last night at 12:30. I had been out in Ohio at Dayton, Disneyana, then drove out to Kansas City to collect Nancy, who was doing a Hallmark convention, and then we did Laugh-O-Gram Studios, where Walt basically started his professional animation career. Then drove out to Missouri to visit Marceline and stopped by the Disney Hometown Museum. Managed to put 4,250 miles in the car in just 8 days. And I know you have been doing a lot of road tripping over the last 3 months or so. Mm-hmm. Do you know that feel like when you finish the long road trip, you're home, but you still feel like you're in the car? That little,
your body's been folded into a certain position for so long. It's like you still feel like you're in driving position. The tense shoulders and all that. Yeah. Which is exactly why I ordered the hotel room with the Whirlpool spa to blow the jets and get the kinks out.
Okay, and so speaking of chugging along, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, 13 days in theaters at this point, has earned $240 million North America, $87 million overseas, worldwide gross to date of $328 million. The first animated Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, was released domestically back in mid-November of 2018, and over 112 days in North American theaters, sold $190 million worth of tickets. So contrast that to Across the Spider-Verse in just 13 days in theaters, has already earned $50 million more than the first animated Spidey did during a 4-month-long run. So that's kind of crazy. Folks at Sony have to be thrilled with how Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has been doing at the box office. That said, they were taking no chances with this Into the Spider-Verse sequel. They were tweaking it right up until it was released to theaters on June 2nd of this year. And we know this because Haley Steinfeld, the voice of Gwen Stacy, she was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, which is hosted by Josh Horowitz just recently, and got talking about voicing Spider-Gwen. And then talked about how down to the wire they were when it came to the voice work on the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. Interview recorded in late May, just ahead of Across the Spider-Verse release to theaters. And Steinfeld basically said, we had been working on this one until like a week ago. Speaking of Spider-Gwen, Across the Spider-Verse producers Phil Lord and Chris Miller were guests on Anthony D'Alessandro's Crew Call podcast. Well, all right, Aaron, is this where we hammer on the klaxon? Because we are going to minor spoilers, itty-bitty spoilers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, go ahead. Here we go. Horn is sounding.
Okay.
Everybody cover your ears for the next 2 minutes if you want to remain spoiler-free. Go ahead.
Okay. D'Alessandro specifically asked Lord and Miller if there'd be multiversal variants of Gwen Stacy in Beyond the Spider-Verse, which, by the way, just to remind you, doesn't arrive in theaters till March 29th of next year. And Miller said, currently, yes. I would say yes. And Lord commented on that there's one I'm very excited about. And Miller continued, yes, I know exactly the one you're talking about. And Lord continued, you know the one I'm thinking of, which is based on, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And Miller finished this out, but it is sort of integral to the plot, I would say.
Well, I should certainly hope so. Otherwise, it would get cut, right?
Yeah, but I have to get out this weekend at some point and see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Likewise, The Flash, which also has all sorts of multiverse twists and turns. Aaron and I got dinged a few weeks back because we revealed that Nicolas Cage would be appearing in this movie playing the Man of Steel he was supposed to play in Tim Burton's Superman Live, which Warner Brothers was originally supposed to release to theaters back in the summer of 1998. So 25 years ago, we were supposed to get this version, Nicolas Cage's version of Superman. So I just must have been weird for him to pull on the suit that far after the fact.
By the way, I've also heard that shows up as and shows up as
there are so many in this movie. But the big question here obviously is how much multiverse is too much multiverse. I mean, think about it. Both Marvel and DC are really working this side of the street in their cinematic universes. And will the concept continue to seem special?
I think after we get done with it, we'll be so full of it that the next phase will be like a new clean slate. You know, the way that Thanos just isn't even referenced anymore. It was like, yep, that was phase 1, but here we are, you know, much, much later in our phases, and we don't need to reference Thanos. So I think that by the time we do finally get to Secret Wars and it's over with, the next phase will be like, okay, now it's the Galactus phase, and all compasses will point towards that one story thread.
Interesting.
I mean, DC's going to have to do something as well with their relaunch. So I don't think James Gunn is going to be too eager to keep going back to that well. He's going to want to start with a clean slate. And so I think DC's got a fresh starting point, and once Marvel's done playing its hand out, they'll have other things they'll want to move on to as well.
Speaking of making these films special, you came across an article this week about, well, you talked on our last show about Spider-Punk and how it kind of hurt your eyes, and now you know why.
Exactly. There, it was on Twitter, and the handle, if you want to go follow this person, apparently this is the animator for Spider-Punk, is at CGRATZLAFF. I guess that's CG Ratslaff. Okay. So he said that they had to break all the animation rules in order to bring Spider-Punk alive. And he did a test demo, and the higher-ups liked the result so much that they said, yes, let's do this for the entirety of the movie. And so then in his tweet, he revealed their rules for Hobie were bodies on the 3s, offset the vest, also on the 3s, but delayed by a frame or two, guitar on 4s, outline on 2s only when he's moving, should remain static when he's held still, and then they have a cutout around the guitar, and of course they broke those rules whenever they needed to for the sake of the film. So, Jim, can you explain what it is if they're doing something on the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s? Because that didn't mean anything to me.
Well, all right. So film, it's 16 frames per second, and typically if you want really smooth animation, you do it on the 1s. On the other hand, if I want to say television animation is typically Saturday mornings on 4s, sometimes on 2s. So as in 2, every second frame or every fourth frame.
Oh, okay. So this is how many frames they're skipping to?
Well, frame per second.
Gotcha.
Again,
Okay.
60. So, God, to do individual parts of a character on that, some parts of him on 4s, some parts on 3s. Oh, no wonder.
Now, I want you to, if you could, because you understand the technical, the backside of it, right? I want you to try to imagine in your head what looking at Spider-Punk animated like that would do to your brain. And then when you actually get into the theater, see how it lines up. Is it as chaotic? Because my eyes could not hold a single image. It was always in flux, moving, popping. And I know he's Spider-Punk, right? You got to make it punk rock. You got to break the rules, man. So I get that, if you're breaking the animation rules, that's punk rock. That's cool. But my eyes just, they can't handle it. And so it's like, I would love it if it were still art hanging on a wall in a movie. Hard for me to grasp visually. So, enjoy that when you do see it. Keep those numbers in mind and see, wow, is this as punk rock? Is that what, that animation style translates to now for punk rock?
But just individual body parts or aspects of the character done in that style. I mean, how, they talk about how in subliminal advertising, suddenly we're getting into 32nd Street territory here. Aaron, the other wonderful podcast that Aaron works on. But one frame to make a piece of clothing pop or a guitar pop or that sort of thing. But to do that for an entire film, oh my God.
Yeah, but they're also doing it like, it's like in one instant, it'll look like he was a newspaper clipping. And then the next instant, like his mohawk style will change dramatically. And like he's always morphing and fluxing. It's not like, if Miles is wearing his red and white Jordan shoes and he's, got his normal, clothes on, that stays consistent throughout the entirety of the movie. But Spider-Punk is constantly just changing. And that is, especially if you're doing it at this offset rate, it just is buggy. It looks like a glitch happening constantly. And I get it's punk rock. It's the style. It's cool. Try it. I wish my eyes could handle it.
Yeah, and there's a part of me that it's one thing for an animator to propose doing it. It's quite another to have to do it for an entire film.
Right. Well, he's not in it that much. This one character doesn't have the world's largest amount of screen time. So if he's doing it just on this one character, that may be 10 minutes of film out of that whole 2.5 hour runtime plus or whatever it was. So yeah, not the whole film.
Wow. But even so.
Yeah.
Just
still
one of those things where
challenge.
it's like, yikes. Okay. Yep. So lots of other Marvel-related news to get to here, folks. But before we do that, I want to remind you, news portion of Marvelous Disney is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience every time, please book online at StorybookDestinations.com. Okay, Aaron, we are now 6 weeks and change into the writer's strike, which officially began back on May 2nd at 12:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it seems like every week now we have news about yet another Marvel Studios production that's either been severely impacted or flat out shut down by this job action. By the way, folks, just to be clear here, Ann and I stand solidly with the writers. Anyway, just today, as Aaron and I were getting ready to record this week's edition of Marvelous Disney, we learned that Daredevil Reborn, the 18-episode reboot of the Netflix series, and the reboot, by the way, began officially began production in New York City back on March 6th of this year, has now officially halted production and won't resume shooting until the writer's strike is over. Now, mind you, Aaron, the scripts are written. They could have, in theory, continued, but the picket lines that the writers set up, a number of the unions that are sympathetic to the writers just flat out refused to cross the picket lines. And it just became so time-consuming to try to get anything shot. It's like, okay, we're done.
Well, plus there was that typo where they called him Dark Devil for a couple of pages. Damn autocorrect. We could have been filming.
That's funny. Anyway, they at this point, they are 3 months into filming Daredevil Reborn. Now, honestly, not sure how many episodes are in the can at this point. And what I do know is shooting on this limited series for Disney Plus was supposed to continue for another 5 months, till November 15th of this year. So we'll have to see what happens there. Writer's strike has been impacting projects that Marvel Studios was readying for theatrical release as well. In the case of Deadpool 3, because of that that film actually has a unique get-out-of-jail-free card, because Ryan Reynolds isn't just starring, he's also producing Deadpool 3. So that allows this filmmaker to tweak the script of the movie while it's in production. So Deadpool 3 won't be hampered by the writer's strike, which is why, I'm told, Marvel Studios just opted to move up the release date of this Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman two-hander from November 8th of next year to May 3rd, 2024. And if you hear that screaming off in the distance, folks, those are the special effects people who are working on this Sean Levy film, who just found out they have 7 fewer months to complete the effects work. Which, remember, we were just talking about Quantum Mania and some of the issues. A lot of people talked about how the effects work got rushed on that film and made things really problematic at Marvel Studios. A quick side note. Zazie Beetz, who memorably played Domino in Deadpool 2, won't be returning to that role in Deadpool 3. Not sure what happened there. Beetz is very gracious when asked about this casting oversight, just saying that I'm excited to watch it when asked about this next installment of the Deadpool film franchise.
That don't sound good. That almost sounds like they recast her with someone that she would consider to be like an inferior actress and go, yeah, can't wait to see that movie. I'll be loving watching that. Trainwreck.
Okay.
With my popcorn, I'll be in the front row. You can say a positive thing and have all the venom in the world in it. Like, oh yes, I'll be in the front row on opening night with my bag of popcorn, just loving the hell out of whatever Ryan has put up on that screen because he wasn't willing to pay me money and he went with a cheap.
Wow. Okay, you and I would wander the Hallmark aisle in very different ways.
Yes,
it's a thank you card. Yeah, it's a thank you in that Southern way of bless his heart.
Yeah, I have been known to send out cards that say "get better soon," and people go, "But I'm not sick," and I'm like, "No, I know you're not. You're just a jack. You need to get better soon, please."
All right. On that note, getting back to other future releases from the MCU. The release date of Avengers Kang Dynasty got pushed back by a full year to May 1st, 2026. I'm told this scheduling decision was a twofer. Yes, publicly, this is because of the writer's strike, but privately, folks at Marvel are concerned about what's continuing to go on with Jonathan Majors' legal problems. And by the way, it was interesting just in the past couple of weeks to watch how MGM, which released Creed, in which Majors played that film's villain, back on March 3rd of this year. And you got to remember that Jonathan was arrested on March 25th. He's been accused of assaulting and harassing a woman. How they then changed the promotion for the Blu-ray, which came out on May 23rd. And what was interesting is the television campaign to support Creed 3. There didn't seem to be a villain in that movie.
Was it just Creed shadowboxing the whole time?
Well, now, speaking of which, though, speaking of television-related stuff and Jonathan Majors, earlier this week, the assembled episode that was supposed to have taken Disney Plus subscribers behind the scenes on the production of Ant-Man and the Wasp was supposed to debut on the streaming service. In fact, it was supposed to debut this week on Tuesday, June 13th. And very last minute, this episode was pulled off of Disney Plus schedule. And why was that, you ask? Because Jonathan Majors was supposed to appear in court on that very same day as his case moved forward. And Disney's fear was people would Google Jonathan Majors, and rather than be directed to the assembled episode on Disney Plus, they'd be directed to court coverage of his date in court. So it's like, okay, we're going to sit on that and wait for a later time to have that assembled episode get dropped into the mix. And by the way, folks, Aaron and I, when we were pre-gaming tonight, you wanted to bring up the story about the gentleman who played Namor the Submariner.
Well, I don't want to bring it up. It's just one of them things where you kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, so to speak.
You do. And Tenoch Huerta, who was in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, has also been accused. And in this case, it's sexual assault. And just the other day, Huerta released a statement saying that these allegations are simply untrue, and he's hired an attorney, and they're working on that. But if you're an executive at Marvel Studios and you're looking ahead at your two big event movies, Avengers Kang Dynasty, which, again, we just mentioned, has been pushed back by a year. And then the film that finishes up that story, Avengers Secret War, which were both supposed to prominently feature Kang the Conqueror and Namor the Submariner. These obviously aren't the sort of headlines you want associated with your upcoming event superhero films. And, by the way, a release date of Avengers Secret War also been pushed back by a full year. That's now not coming out till May 7th, 2027.
So thank goodness for artificial intelligence, because they can just take whatever they shot and it will be, they'll just replace him with Mr. Bean, someone who's very innocent, and it'll be the Bean Wars. And Rowan Atkinson will be our villain because he's simply adorable. That, or like, the Geico Gecko, is the villain, because you got to find someone who is just pure innocent to play your villain. And it just sucks that, anything, like, you got to support the victim and let them have their day in court. And then it seems really petty to even have to talk about, what about the movies? Because it's, like, someone's been hurt. So the conversation usually should be about the person who's been hurt. And so sometimes I just see a lot of articles and they're like, what about the future of Marvel? And it's just like, yeah, but what about the people that got hurt? Can we talk about that for a minute? Yeah. It's like COVID did a number on Disney's books. They've been pinched before financially for things out of their control. And I know that they would just wish that this would go away, but deep down inside they would like justice to be served. And that's kind of why they're not drawing attention to anything or anyone at the moment. They're remaining completely silent about everything until an actual verdict comes out, and then maybe there'll be a recasting if it's guilty. Maybe they'll pat him on the back and say, we knew he was good all along, if it comes out not guilty. But they're not going to do a darn thing, because either way it's going to cost them financially something. Well,
it's interesting you bring up COVID and someone who's hurt, because remember, during the production of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, yes, there was that accident on the set in Worcester, Massachusetts, but at the same time, Disney was having to deal with Letitia Wright saying some pretty controversial things in regard to vaccination and that sort of thing in regard to the pandemic. So she was, she was kind of a twofer. And speaking of Letitia Wright, she was recently interviewed by Inverse and got asked about what's going on with Black Panther 3, a film which, by the way, isn't on any public schedule that Marvel has revealed. And to hear Ms. Wright talk, Ryan Coogler, the writer-director of both the original Black Panther film as well as its sequel, Wakanda Forever, according to Letitia, Ryan needs to rest and think before he decides what's going to happen in Black Panther 3. So, all right, just to finish up discussing what upcoming Marvel movies had their release dates changed this past week, Captain America: Brave New World has now been pushed from May 3rd, 2024 to July 24th of that same year. Thunderbolts has had its release date changed from July 26th, 2024 to December 20th of that same year. Blade, which only just recently got its release date changed to September 6th, 2024, has now been pushed back to February 14th of the following year. And I don't know about you, Aaron, but nothing says Happy Valentine's Day like taking your date to a vampire movie.
Well, I don't know. Hold on now. Dracula is one of the most romantic. He's always after the babes. He bites them on the neck. They are entranced and seduced in his gaze. I mean, he is the old school classic suave villain that's all about the dames.
Okay. All right. In fact, I remember when the Frank Langella version of Dracula was on Broadway, and that a woman would swoon. That's right. Okay, all right, I can get behind that. Okay, and with Blade now opening on February 14th, 2025, that then forced Marvel Studios to push back the release date of its Fantastic Four reboot to May 2nd of that same year, which, by the way, I'm hearing from folks at Marvel, they're actually kind of happy about this particular release date change, because evidently with the script they now have in hand for the reboot, The thinking is that this Matt Shankman movie is really more of a summer blockbuster. And since these days, summer blockbuster season actually starts in late April, early May, May 2nd, 2025 is actually the perfect time or perfect release date for Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four reboot.
Plus, that kind of takes the heat off all the casting rumors they've had lately. It's like, oh, no, that's another year away. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it.
This is true. And by the way, there are other Marvel-related movies in the works I wish I could tell you more about. Like, for example, that top secret Marvel Studios project that Scarlett Johansson is producing for the studio but not starring in. Johansson, who was out, spoke with comicbook.com earlier this month while she was out doing publicity for Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. When asked about the super secret project, which, by the way, Kevin Feige revealed was in the works back in November of 2021, Scarlett said, yes, it is still happening, but not currently because nothing is happening right now. We're all in sort of a holding pattern as we wait out the writer's strike. And then there's Bad Bunny's El Muerto movie, the one about that the little-known Spider-Man villain, the wrestler that gained superpowers when he put on a mystical mask. Right now, they're saying that movie is going before the cameras August 7th of this year and will be out in theaters January 12th of next year.
That's ambitious.
If we look at the first quarter of next year, okay, so in theory, El Muerto comes out on January 12th. 6 weeks later, Madam Web arrives in theaters on February 16th. Then 6 weeks after that, on March 29th, we get Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, the third part of the animated Spidey trilogy. That's a lot of Spider-Man content inside of 3 months.
Yeah.
And now to further muddy the water here. I mean, Aaron and I are recording this at like 8:45 East Coast time on Thursday night. 2 hours ago, Deadline revealed that Sony has just announced to the trades that it's reserving two more dates for Spider-Man related projects. One of them is November 8th, 2024, and the second is June 27th, 2025. Could one of these be a new release date for El Muerto? What's fascinating is to watch the number of people who are already sticking a flag in June 27th, 2025 and saying, okay, there it is. That's Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4. Now, here's the thing. It's possible. Spider-Man Homecoming was released to theaters on July 7th, 2017. The second of that series, Far From Home, was released on July 2nd, 2019. So a June 27th, 2025, kind of in the same window. Rather than being to one side of July 4th weekend, it's on the other side. But here's the thing, Aaron. The top earner so far of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, No Way Home, that's the one that made $1.9 billion worldwide. That was released to theaters December 21st, 2021. Not sure how to read the tea leaves here right now.
Yeah, I think, it's that secret melange or recipe that the chef won't give up. It's like, does all these other Spider-Man movies have an Andrew Garfield or a Tobey Maguire in them? Well, that kind of plays something in beyond just the date. Mm-hmm. Because I think once opening weekend for that third Spidey flick came out, word of mouth then started to buzz. Oh, by the way, something really, really cool. And like I told a friend of mine, have you ever seen the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield movies? And they're like, oh, yeah, but it's been a really long time. Like, you should just, watch them before you go see this Spidey movie for reasons of its own. And they're like, oh, okay. And they did. They ended up spending like an entire week watching all 5 of those movies. But when they went in and watched Spider-Man No Way Home, that moment when Andrew catches MJ in the fall and he has that emotional reaction. That hit him so hard because that was a fresh wound all of a sudden. Yeah. That wasn't years and years old and recalling from memory. Oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. That was just last week. Damn, that hurts. I'm crying. Why am I crying?
Yeah. that one again. That was a fun day at the movies. And speaking of circling back, when we get back from this break, folks, we're gonna not only talk about the first two movies in the MCU, but we're going to talk about a gentleman who had a huge impact. He's one of the reasons we love Marvel Comics.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Gift magical mornings with Nespresso Virtuo Pop. Compact and stylish, Virtuo Pop is made to meet every morning coffee craving. From espresso to coffee, hot or iced, at the click of a button. And celebrate the season with Nespresso's limited edition coffee flavors. Sweet almond and hibiscus, cinnamon and candied tamarind, and festive double espresso. Magic in the making. Shop the holiday gift collection exclusively at Nespresso.com.
Okay, we spent a lot of today's show talking about the MCU. To be specific, the 32 interconnecting films that Marvel Studios has produced since 2008. With the first two, Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk being released within 6 weeks of one another. Jon Favreau's Iron Man arrived in theaters May 2nd, 2008, and then Louis Leterrier's The Incredible Hulk showed up at your neighborhood multiplex on June 13th of that same year. I bring up these two MCU films tonight because, well, the original Iron Man was originally released by Paramount. Disney acquired the distribution rights to that Favreau film July of 2013. That was nearly 4 years after the Mouse announced its intentions to acquire Marvel Entertainment in August of 2009. Whereas The Incredible Hulk was released by Universal Pictures. And Wednesday of this week, Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment began taking pre-orders for a collectible steelbook edition of the original Iron Man. This 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray isn't going to hit store shelves till September 5th of this year, and I love this revision in this Disney Studio history because Disney is in the middle of celebrating its 100th anniversary. And they want to release this steelbook edition of the original Iron Man because the thinking is now it is one of the most important titles in the Disney film library. If there wasn't the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, there wouldn't have been an MCU. Whereas The Incredible Hulk, which again produced and released by Universal Pictures, is making its Disney Plus debut on Friday, June 16th, the exact same day that this edition of Marvelous Disney goes live online. And Aaron, there's been a lot of speculation about what this means. And you were saying, was it last year that the stories began to bubble up that the film rights for both the Hulk and Namor the Submariner had supposedly returned to Disney, right?
Supposedly. I mean, I do recall that we did a story once upon a time about it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that seemed like when I read the headline, like just today, I was like, yeah, I thought that happened over a year ago. So why is it that The Incredible Hulk is now showing up today? Is there something that triggered it, that made it available? I mean, there's all sorts of language in the contracts for distribution between movie theaters, and then, well, after it gets out of theaters, then it goes to HBO. And then after HBO, then it goes to Blu-ray. And then was there language somewhere that all of a sudden it's now available for Disney to scoop up and yank it away, or what?
Take, for example, September of last year, The Hulk character made appearances for about a week, 10 days inside of the Disney California Adventure theme park. This was in the time travel suit from Endgame. Likewise, we had the Hulk's son introduced to the MCU in the final episode, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, mid-October of last year. And whenever I talk to anybody at Marvel about, you guys have the rights, right? And they're like, well, that would be news to the folks at Universal. But at the same time, it's like, the question is, which rights are we talking about here? Now, for example, Universal clutches the theme park rights that it has to the Marvel characters, which, by the way, it had both the East Coast and the West Coast rights. But in one of those decisions that I'm sure cost somebody their job, they just weren't using the Marvel characters on the West Coast except for walk-around characters. So in the winter of 2008-2009, somebody on the West Coast decided, do we really want to continue to pay for those, to have Spidey and Wolverine and Storm meet with folks, on the upper lot? And it's like, yeah. And they let that lapse, not knowing that a mere 6 to 8 months later, Disney would then buy Marvel Entertainment. Now, I want to lie to you, there are people who really, really, really want Disney to gain full control to the rights of Hulk, not just the theme park rights, because the way it works now, the deal that Disney supposedly has with Universal is they are free to use the Hulk, but he's always got to be a supporting character. He can't be the star of the film. So the Mark Ruffalo version of the Hulk is always he can be part of the team, he can be featured, but he can't be the star of the show. The thing of it is that there are folks who would love to see Disney make a run at doing a full-blown movie version of World War Hulk. There's a number of folks who immediately, when they learned that Disney had bought Fox and they're going to reboot Fantastic Four, and given Reed Richards' role in the World War Hulk comic book crossover event, it's like, that's why they're bringing him on the canvas. They're going to do World War Hulk. Aaron, this is not actually a crazy idea. I mean, think about it. If the MCU pattern holds, 4 years after we do the second event film, the Avengers Secret War in 2027, they're going to be looking to tee up another Avengers event. So I think you were just talking about Galactus.
For the next phase of what comes next. Yeah. Well, the thing that got me thinking about Marvel most recently, about their movie release dates, is all of the date changes that just happened in the last couple of days, because it wasn't just Marvel movies that got pushed back. The Avatar sequels, I think, all got pushed back by a little bit. So it's like those, I think, Kathleen Kennedy may have been the one that was talking about event films, that they only happen once every so often. You can't have 4 per year and still have it be special. And that's the thing with Marvel, is like, we've got so many darn characters that, a Thor movie should be different from a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. They've got their own personal identities, but you've also got Bob Iger back in the office, who's trying to tell Kevin Feige, slow down, man. We need a little bit less. We need smaller budgets. We need not as many TV series. We need to space them out a little bit more. So I just wonder if all of the shuffling, I know it's got to do with the writer's strike, but does it also happen to coincide with what Bob Iger would like? Because if you move Secret Wars and Secret Wars and the Kang Dynasty back by another year or two, doesn't that ease up your budget a little bit for a year or two?
Somewhat. The downside is that if you look at what movies cost to make in the early 2000s versus what they cost to make today, right? In our age of amazing digital effects and that sort of thing, it's still always expensive. And more to the point, if you are developing something and you have housekeeping deals with your actors and that sort of thing, right? There are expenses that you have to carry on the books. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think you are correct that there clearly has to be some sort of a financial element here. But at the same time, again, you need writers to write the scripts, and the other thing, to be honest, is there are a number of other potential strikes coming over the hill. In fact, as Scarlett Johansson's interview also alluded to that, to the effect of the project that she's producing for Marvel may get tripped up by a Producers Guild strike. So to circle back to World War Hulk, that was a crossover event for Marvel Comics in 2007. And given that John Romita Sr. stopped working full-time for Marvel Comics back in 1996, I guess I doubt that this legendary Marvel artist would have worked on that crossover event. But then again, given that John, in what he saw as his semi-retirement, was busier than most men at their height of their careers, that he kept going back to Marvel, I honestly can't say for certain if Romita Sr. didn't have something to do with World War Hulk. In fact, in a 2002 interview, Romita was quoted as saying, "No matter what success I've had, I've always considered myself a guy who can improve on someone else's concepts. A writer and another artist can create something, and I can make it better." And I bring up John Romita Sr., Aaron, because earlier this week it was revealed that we lost this revered comic book artist. He was the co-creator of beloved Marvel characters, Wolverine, The Punisher. He was part of came up with Mary Jane Watson. Anyway, Romita Sr.'s death was announced Tuesday night on Twitter by his son, John Romita Jr., who is a successful comic book artist in his own right. And he tweeted out that I say this with a heavy heart. My father passed away peacefully in his sleep. He is a legend in the art world. It would be my honor to follow in his footsteps. Please keep your thoughts and condolences here out of respect for my family. He was the greatest man I ever met. Do you have any specific memories of obviously he worked on a number of books, you must be familiar with and be a fan of, Aaron.
Yeah, I've got many. He was a longtime artist for Spider-Man, and then his son, I want to say in 2000s, did a long run of Spider-Man. And I would curse at his son by comparing him to his father. Isn't that the worst for a kid, is to be compared directly to your dad? But yeah, I'd look at his Spider-Man versus dad's Spidey and go, yeah, you got chops, kid, I'll give you that, but she ain't no senior.
Yeah.
But respect to him. I mean, he is both brilliant artists.
Oh, no, absolutely. But Romita Sr., he was born in Brooklyn in 1920, son of a baker. One of 5 kids, he graduates from the Manhattan School of Industrial Art in 1947, serves in the U.S. Army, and was working in comics by the age of 19.
Yeah.
Okay, next decade and a half, he splits time. He's going back and forth between the companies that would eventually become Marvel and DC, Timely Comics and National Comics, working a number of titles, but largely, specializing in romantic comics. But it's not till 1966 that Romita begins a 5-year run working with Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee on The Amazing Spider-Man. He took over for artist Steve Ditko, who invented the character Whit Lee back in 1961. Steve and Stan had a fight, and so, Romita was a tag, you're it. The next 5 years, so much of the stuff we know even today about Spider-Man, whether it's his love interest, Mary Jane, or Kingpin, again, the crime boss. And what's interesting, it was during Romita Sr.'s run that Spider-Man overtook Fantastic Four as Marvel's top seller. And it was during this time that Spider-Man literally became the face of the company. That logo in the corner that had half Peter's face and half of Spider-Man's face.
Yep.
Okay, anyway, 1972, Romita becomes Marvel's unofficial art director, a role that he was formally given a year later. And he then contributes to the design of characters like Luke Cage, the Punisher, and Wolverine, while training Romita's Raiders. This is a group of in-house artists that would often fix pages that had just, were in the production pipeline that were deemed unusable. And it's just like, oh, God, we need to get this at the printer, fix that. He would then serve as Marvel's art director for more than 2 decades, while completing artwork for a number of titles. In fact, the one he's very well known for is the 1987 Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 21, that's the one where Spider-Man and, in Peter Parker form, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are tying that on the cover. Are there any particular books during that period, that you loved or that you have in your collection, Aaron? Or?
I don't know if he did The Death of Gwen Stacy or not. I would have to look it up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, actually, John Romita Sr. ended up, doing the ink work for the Death of Gwen Stacy in the Amazing Spider-Man comics. And those are ones that I had from when I was a wee lad. Mm-hmm. Those, the Green Goblin used to give me nightmares as a little kid. Mm-hmm. So obviously he's my favorite villain for the Spider-Man universe. Mm-hmm. And the Death of Gwen Stacy is one of the earliest comics that I'd ever had that really stuck with me forever and ever. Because it was like, when you're tiny like that, the concept that the good guy can fail and someone can die was mind-shattering for someone so young. And it was like everything had consequences after that. So, that was a big one.
Yeah, and what does it say when we lose you at 93 and people are still saying we lost him too soon? So anyway, Mr. Adams and I extend our heartfelt condolences to the friends and family of John Romita Sr. during their time of sorrow. And that's basically going to do it for this week's show, folks. Next week's show, Aaron and I will be talking about Secret Invasion, the new limited series that Marvel Studios is producing for Disney+. This 6-episode series, which stars Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, debuts on that subscription streaming service on Wednesday, June 21st. And but if you're looking for something fun to listen to in the interim, might I suggest 32nd Street? So what are you covering on this week's episode, Aaron?
This week's episode was alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and marijuana advertising laws. And it sounds so dry and so boring, but we found out that we've been worried about losing our broadcast license because of the FCC will take it away if you do certain things with alcohol. And it's simply not true. It's actually an agreement amongst all of the alcohol industry where they self-regulate so the government doesn't have to do it for them. Because tobacco was like, you can't advertise anymore, it's bad for children. And then, so the FCC was like, you just can't. And so at that point, there were a lot of drinking and driving accidents, and there was MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And so there was a lot of public pressure. And so the alcohol industry said, hey, maybe if we do something about this, we'll still be able to advertise, but we won't be banned like the tobacco industry. And so all they did was just add something simple, like a little tag that says, please drink responsibly. And that kind of absolved all the sins after that. And so we were talking about like Norm on Cheers. You remember the finale? They were drinking actual beer, and then they went on, I think it was Leno for that night, and they were all faced on that show, right? There was this big thing like, is the FCC going to, take Leno off the air? And it was like, no, because there's actually no real law saying you can't drink on television. It's just frowned on, and the broadcasters are like, we don't want to encourage bad behavior, so we just agree not to. But no law. So if you're on television, drink up. We see Anderson Cooper do it on New Year's Eve, right? So, it's okay. Nothing bad will happen.
Oh, okay. Look forward to that episode. And speaking of podcasts and the like, we have a couple other shows here we'd like you to check out. We have, of course, The Mothership, Disney Dish, which I do with Len Testa. We have Fine Tuning, and Drew Taylor, right now, as we speak, is over in France at Annecy, collecting all sorts of animated-related stories. I mean, he's coming back with loads and loads of stuff. You're going to want to catch these shows, folks. Looking at Lucasfilm, Brian Gonnen and I will be bumping out a new show this weekend, out ahead of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And if you could do Aaron and I a favor, if you could head on over to the Apple Store and rate and recommend, well, not just the podcast you're listening to right now, Marvelous Disney, but also if you could put in a plug for 32nd Street, that would be helpful. If you really, really, really like what you heard here tonight, if you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be cool. Social media-wise, Aaron, where can we find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter because Janelle Monáe has been trending, and I found out it's good to click on Janelle Monáe when she's trending. So I'm on Twitter a lot nowadays.
Wow. Okay. I, too, am on Twitter. Likewise, on Instagram is Jim Hill Media, and also on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that's going to do it for this week. So thanks for listening, folks. And Aaron and I will be back soon.